check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Welcome to Game Changer by Powerhouse Coaching, your podcast to master the mental game, elevate your brilliance, and build a legacy of progress and impact. My name is Amanda Escobedo. I'm your host and inner game coach here to help you change the game. Welcome to episode 17. It's been 17 weeks since we've launched this. If you've been listening to the Game Changer for a while, today might sound just a little different, and that's very intentional. When I started this podcast, the goal was and has always been the same. Number one, to help people lead with purpose and impact, and to give you mindset tools to unlock your inner game changer. Now, the foundation and the focus of this podcast has not changed, but what is changing is a little bit about my approach on how to execute that. And so moving forward, this podcast is going to become a little more intentional in the sense that it's going to be very focused on education and more structure around education. So rather than reacting to headlines or breaking news on what's happening out in the world, we're going to focus on building what matters in here. And so the goal is simple and very clear: to give you foundational tools that help you think clearly, lead wisely, transform frustrations and obstacles and life experiences into your purpose, impact, and legacy. So think of Game Changer as a bit of curriculum for the inner game, your mental mindset, the mindset required to navigate business, leadership, and life with clarity and intention. So same mission, but more focus, deeper tools. And today we're starting you off with the foundation of those tools, the foundation of the basics of the mental mind, or the mindset that we're really trying to cultivate for you. So this isn't really today about strategy. It's not about tactics. It's not about teaching you the hustle. We're really starting you off with the basics of the mind, because everything we build from here rests on the understanding of these basics, this foundation. And if you don't understand how the mind works, your thinking will quietly run your career, your business, your leadership, your creativity, your relationships, your finances, your health, everything in your life without your consent. So, I always love to ask you a question. Let me kick off with this question. What if the biggest driver of your career results, your business outcomes, and your leadership effectiveness had nothing to do with the circumstances at play, had nothing to do with how you grew up, had nothing to do with what's going on in your environment right now, but really was dependent? Your outcomes, your results were really dependent on how you thought about those circumstances. So that idea first hit me when I was in my 20s, I believe. Had just moved to the Bay Area. I was living in Fremont, shout out to Fremont. And for the first time, I had heard this quote by Henry Ford. And this quote was, "Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right." And at that time, it didn't just sound like a motivational quote to me. It actually shot me into consciousness. It was the first real introduction to mindset that I had ever been introduced to. And I remember mentally walking through every storyline I had about myself after I read this quote. What if I believed I could do, who I thought I could become, and the limits I had quietly accepted as truth? And that moment is where a follow-up question came to myself. What if I actually can? What if I actually can? No matter what my circumstances are today, no matter the cards I've been dealt in life, no matter what life throws my way, what if? It was such an emotional and honestly powerful moment that I got that quote literally tattooed on the inside of my arm. I have it there today. So every time I flex, you'll see my nice little tattoo, because that simple quote was, for me, a paradigm shift. It completely transformed how I live today. And we're actually going to dive a lot more into paradigms into another episode. And so hold that thought on what a paradigm is. But I share that quote because it really feeds into the foundation of what we're going to be reviewing today. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And the simple truth, but life changing truth is whatever you think becomes your reality. It really drives your actions. If you think you can, then you will, because imagine that thought process and imagine the thought process that drives the actions, the behaviors, the habits that produce the outcome just because you believe you can. If you believe you cannot, imagine the inactions, the habits that do not start to cultivate, that you do not even try to cultivate just because of the simple thought that you believe it is not possible. And so the reality is, and what we will be reviewing today is your thoughts are not facts. Your thoughts are not facts. You have the opportunity to choose what you think. But your thoughts, whatever you're thinking, create your results. And so choose what you're thinking wisely. And so today, what we're going to be reviewing is what I'd call the results model. Now, you may hear this model be called different things across different coaching, psychology, or leadership frameworks, but the premises are all the same. And I'm going to break it out to you within this episode of what is the results model. And so it's a simple model that basically says your circumstances create your thoughts, trigger thoughts, and I'll dive more into that. Your thoughts trigger or create your feelings, the vibrations in your body. Your feelings are what drive your actions or your inactions. And whatever you're acting on or not acting on are what produce your results. And so let's break that down a little more. So if we start this model, circumstances drive thoughts, thoughts drive feelings, feelings drive actions, actions drive results. If we start off by defining this circumstances at play, what we're really talking about is all the circumstances that are at play right now. We're actually saying circumstances are situations that are neutral. All circumstances you've ever experienced in your life have ever been a part of, all circumstances you have witnessed, everything that you're seeing on the news and social media, everything that you're reviewing and experiencing is not bad and it's not good. It's neutral. And so this is where your thoughts come into play. So before you say, but Amanda, have you been watching the news and everything that's been happening on the news? Yes, I've been watching, which is why I need to filter myself out from the news and social media sometimes. But what I want to challenge you is everything that you're watching and reading is not bad and it's not good. Even death, if you think of it, can be debated by many people. If we talk again, I want to kind of stay away from the politics and all of that. But if you think of what's going on in the news, people celebrate some people's death. People mourn over people's death. People say someone that died is a good thing. Some people say that someone died is a bad thing. This is where your thoughts come into play. It's your thoughts, your way of thinking, the narrative that you have applied to that circumstance that makes the circumstance either good and either bad. We as humans are meaning making machines. We are meaning making machines. We make meaning of everything, whether that meaning matches the intention of the circumstance or someone's actions, it does not matter. We make meaning based on our upbringing, based on what we've experienced, and based on how we see the world. And we all see the world very differently. It's our thoughts that assign meaning to those circumstances that make that circumstance bad or good. And so it's our thoughts. They're our opinions, the narrative we apply to circumstances, the stories we tell ourselves. They're how we interpret circumstances. They're how we interpret certain things. They're the narratives that feed our perspective. And thoughts can be triggered by circumstances. So let's say a car drives into a tree. That is a neutral circumstance. And that circumstance where a car drives into a tree could trigger your thoughts on its own. So that's where our brain is trying to make meaning of what's happening around us. So thoughts can be triggered by circumstances. Thoughts can just come out of thin air. While you're making your coffee, all of a sudden you get a thought about work, you get a thought about money, you get a thought about a TV show. Has nothing to do with the circumstance at play. You're making coffee. you're driving, you're thinking about your ex, right? Your thoughts can just come out of thin air. So again, they can either be triggered by circumstances, come out of thin air, or they can be intentional ways of thinking where we are conscious and we decide how we want to think. We decide what we want to think. And so those are different ways that your thoughts can be triggered or occurred. And it's your thoughts. They start to create vibrations in the body. And so this is where feelings come into play. Feelings are the emotional and physical sensation that your thoughts create, the vibration that occurs in your body. And so the feelings are a response to your thinking. Your feelings are the vibration that tells your nervous system whether this is bad, whether this is good, whether this is neutral. And so, depending on the narrative that you're applying to circumstances or whatever it is that you're thinking, your thoughts start to generate low vibration feelings or the feelings we don't like, right? Generally, the feelings we try to avoid or resist, the feelings that energetically drain us, or your thoughts generate high vibration feelings, the good vibes. You've seen all those shirts and those signs that say good vibes. All I want are good vibes. Those are the feelings that energize us. And these feelings are what drive our actions or our inactions. They drive what we do, what we don't do, what we avoid, especially when we're not conscious to what we're feeling. And for many, your feelings operate like little drunk drivers in your life. If you are not conscious to what you're feeling and what you're thinking, then likely your actions, your habits, your behaviors are driven by how you're feeling. And this is why for some people, discipline is really hard. They're like, how do you wake up so early? I don't have the motivation. It's because your actions are dependent on what you're feeling in that moment. If you feel motivated, then you'll go to the gym. This is where your feelings are driving your outcomes. You're allowing your feelings to drive your outcomes. And so, again, as a result, your feelings are the outcomes we experience in our lives, in our careers, in our business. Our outcomes are the results of our actions or our inactions, what we change, what we don't change, avoid, or resist. So, your feelings can be your outcomes. They drive your outcomes if you're allowing your feelings to drive your actions or your inactions. And so here are some key insights. You don't change results by trying to change just behavior and habit alone. You change your results by transforming how you think, what you believe, how you see or interpret the world by transforming how you see yourself, your identity. And your identity is based on your thoughts, is based on how you think about yourself, is based on your belief system by yourself. And so the reason why I say you do not change your results by simply changing your behavior or a habit, there's what we call cognitive dissonance, which basically means if your belief system and your thought process does not match that habit, that action, whatever it is, that behavior you're trying to drive, you can have for a bit your thoughts and the belief systems not match the habit. But what happens is it's going to be like a rubber band that you're pulling back. Eventually, you're going to snap back to old habits and behaviors. And so, what that really means is, let's say, I don't believe the healthy lifestyle of the world is within my DNA. I was born overweight. I come from a family of overweight people. We have all these natural diseases in my family. And I have just accepted and believed diabetes, whatever it is, being overweight was just the cards I've been handed and is a part of my DNA structure. I might be January 1st, like everybody else, signing up for the gym because that's what everybody is saying, all the promos, the marketing, and it's what I know I should be doing to be healthy, go to the gym and do some movement. But if I fundamentally do not believe that a healthy lifestyle and a healthy outcome is something in my cards and a possibility, I'll start to go to the gym for a little bit. But like I mentioned, like that rubber band, I'm going to eventually snap back because my habits and behaviors need to match my belief system. So that little tug of war, that tension starts to form with this cognitive dissonance where your beliefs don't match your habits and your behaviors. This is why you cannot transform alone habits and behaviors. It's the same with leadership. I can read all these books, I can go to all these seminars, I can show up to all these trainings on how to effectively communicate. But at the end of the day, if I believe some people have it and some people don't, some people are coachable and some people are not, then it doesn't matter what I'm learning. I'm not necessarily going to evolve my identity as a leader because I fundamentally believe it would be a waste of my time to put any effort or on people that I do not believe are coachable and do not have it. That fundamental belief, that's what that paradigm shift that we need to happen. And so let's make this a little real and apply it to business. Let's apply thoughts into business. And I want to bring up a case study on how your thinking process can impact your results, can impact your success, can impact or contribute to bankruptcy, right? Failure of your business. And so the case study I kind of want to bring up to you is Netflix versus Blockbuster. I think most of us are very familiar with these stories because we all know Netflix very well. Most of us have accounts, and we were all bummed when they had us kick ourselves off our parents' or our family's friends' accounts. We had to pay for our own subscription. And we all know, we used to rewind those VCR tapes for Blockbuster, and we know there aren't any retail stores around us. So most of us know this story, but I'm still going to recap it for us. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the entertainment industry faced very clear changes. There was a hand that was dealt to the industry that really what I'd say changed the game, and it was related to the internet, right? Internet access expanded with more households and institutions gaining connectivity. Faster connections started happening, right? Dial up to DSL cable to early broadband, and then digital distribution. That also, as an example, what we're now calling streaming, that became more technically feasible. And so I'd consider these are circumstances that the entertainment industry faced in the early 2000s with the internet, all these different things happening with the internet, digital distribution. These are what I'm calling neutral circumstances. They're not good, they're not bad. However, let's look at a perspective on how to look at these from two different companies experiencing the same circumstances. What I want to do is unlock and unpack possible narratives that each company had on these circumstances or led with during this time in the early 2000s. So let's start with Blockbuster. So during this time, Blockbuster was the market leader. And it's very important to be, I'll say, precise with language here because, Blockbuster didn't face challenges. I'm not going to call this challenges. Blockbuster faced circumstances. There were changes happening out in the world. These are circumstances. As I mentioned, the circumstances of the internet, the digital expansion. And so these circumstances, again, were neutral. They weren't good, they weren't bad. They simply just existed and were occurring. Blockbuster's circumstances included also within their business a revenue model that relied on late fees. They also had circumstances at play where a large physical footprint with significant operating costs. This was also a business circumstance they had. And also early shifts in consumer behavior towards convenience and at home access. So at this time, there was a shift in consumer behavior. They wanted more convenience and at home access. Now, here's the critical distinction. Circumstances, again, don't drive our outcomes. Interpretation of these circumstances do. Now, if we were to kind of travel back in time and go inside the leadership's mind, these circumstances were interpreted through a dominant narrative. And that dominant narrative might have sounded like, all of these circumstances are threatening our proven model. People still want stores. They were very attached to the retail model. People want stores, and digital distribution is risky. So even though they may have saw it, they were afraid that it was too new. And because it was too new, it made it risky. Now, if you hear those narratives on how you can interpret a circumstance, possible narratives that Blockbuster's leadership team had, this threatens our proven model, people still want stores, digital distribution is risky. Let's bring it into the results model. That narrative drives feelings of fear, defensiveness, anxiety about losing control, right? And when fear drives the system, it restricts our creativity, reflection, learning, our ability to adapt. And from that internal state, certain actions follow, right? And so when I talk about that internal state where we're leading from fear, defensiveness, anxiety, and that blocks our ability to adapt, reflect, be creative, that internal state then drives actions like doubling down on physical retail instead of experimenting, dismissing subscription based models early on, very dismissive of it, resisting change rather than exploring opportunities and pivoting. The results wasn't a sudden collapse of Blockbuster, it was a failure to evolve. And the narrative limited their creativity. And without that creativity, innovation dies, and so did the business. Now, let's look at Netflix. Now, Netflix began as a DVD by mail company. So before they were streaming, that streaming service was viable at scale, they operated the same era Blockbuster did and experienced the same external circumstances in the world, right? Expanding internet infrastructure, emerging digital distribution, shifts in how consumers assess entertainment. They had the same experiences or circumstances at play as Blockbuster, but what differed was how those circumstances were interpreted by their leadership team. Netflix's way of thinking more sounded like this changes how people want to access entertainment. Physical location may be less relevant over time. So they're starting to think about how this could impact us in the future, how this could impact habits, behaviors of the consumer in the future. Distribution, not stores, is the constraint to solve. So now they're looking at distribution as not as a threat to them. They're more looking at it as, ooh, distribution, not stores, is the constraint to solve, as a problem to solve, right? So those thoughts produce a different emotional response. Uh, it drives curiosity, optimism, and a bit of confidence. And from that emotional state, that internal world that we're talking about, different actions start to follow, right? So if you're leading with a sense and the vibration of curiosity, optimism, and confidence, then actions in response might look like investing early in streaming infrastructure, gradually shifting away from DVDs, using experimentation and data to guide your decisions. And the outcome was not just adaptation of Netflix. Netflix completely reshaped the industry. They became the standard of how content is distributed, produced, and consumed today. So here's the key takeaway that I want you guys to take. The circumstances, again, did not determine the results of Netflix, did not determine the results of Blockbuster. The meaning both companies assigned to the circumstances is what determined their outcomes. What feels like pressure for one leader feels like possibility for another. The same circumstances, but they have different meaning applied to them. So here's a follow up question for you. What meaning are you assigning to the circumstances in front of you? And let's bring this into today as an example. Artificial intelligence is here. AI is here. That's a circumstance. It's already existing, it's advancing quickly, and it's reshaping how work is getting done. Now, notice the narratives surrounding it that you might hear on social media and news, and all the headlines that you might be reading. We're reading about layoffs, AI, doomsday, right? Sound familiar? So you might hear narratives attached to AI sound like, is AI going to take my job? I'm already falling behind. This is dangerous for society. AI is taking over the world. Tech leaders are just using AI to make themselves richer. The rich want to become richer. These narratives are not facts. Again, what I want to reinforce are your thoughts are not facts. These narratives are interpretations of circumstances. They're a perspective, they're a possibility of what could be. But a lot of people speak as though their thoughts are matter of fact. And so I want to challenge the narratives that you might be holding on circumstances in front of you. And this is where I also want you to start challenging the narratives that you're reading in the headlines or on social media, or that you're hearing from people around you, or even from your own leaders and leaders to you. I want to challenge the narratives that you're speaking and leading with as well. Because when these narratives are interpreted as such, if we talk about AI, if you have a narrative attached to AI as AI is going to take my job, AI is dangerous, is going to take over the world, the tech leaders are just using AI to make themselves richer. If this is the interpretation that you hold, then this will often produce within you fear, anxiety, distrust, and a sense and a feeling of powerlessness. And from that emotional state, certain behaviors might start to follow for you: resistance, avoidance, disengagement, inaction. And I have to tell you, in working with a company that's really integrating AI within their tech teams, we have these behaviors. We have these behaviors from a technology team where some people are resistant to use it, right? They're becoming disengaged. They're trying to avoid conversations. And when we really start to unpack the thought process before it, it's related to the fear, the distrust, and all the narratives that we've been reading on the headlines. So I want to pause here for just a second. You know, as I'm saying, challenge these narratives, what I don't want to do is make fear invalid. Okay. And that's number one thing here is I don't want to do invalidate thoughts and opportunities to highlight risk. There are real risks worth examining when it comes to AI, whether it is job displacement, whether it is ethical concerns, whether it is bias, whether it is a concentration of power. But if you notice the reframing, job displacement, ethical concern, these now become areas in which we could examine, lead with curiosity, and potentially start to put a plan in place to actually solve for. So there's less resistance of what's here and more walking closer to the problem or to the fear, examining it and figuring out how to solve it. And so again, noticing the difference between risk awareness and fear based storytelling. Fear based storytelling just starts to paint a picture of doomsday. But doomsday, nobody's solving a problem. We're just living in fear. Whereas increasing our awareness of risk, now we're starting to look at the risk objectively and then as an opportunity to solve for. It only invites problem solving, whereas the other area, doomsday, fear based storytelling, starts to shut down our creativity. Now, consider a different interpretation. Again, the same circumstances at play as it relates to AI. You might hear alternative narratives with AI that might sound like AI is a tool, AI expands what is possible. The person learning AI isn't going to be replaced, but the person will become more valuable to who is learning how to use AI. AI lowers the barrier of entry. This could create more entrepreneurs. So you might have heard that AI is an opportunity to create more entrepreneurs, creators, new forms of opportunity ever before, which means new forms of wealth. So, from those thoughts, a different emotional state start to emerge if that's what you believe. If you believe there's an opportunity for there to be more entrepreneurs, more creators, more opportunity for people to build wealth, then your emotional state might be curiosity, engagement, agency, motivation, all related. And from that state, different actions might follow, right? You might take the initiative to learn more about AI, to experiment with AI, to build skill building, to reimagine your own work, to reimagine your business, to reimagine how to create an impact with this tool. Again, same circumstances, but a different story being applied to the circumstances. A different story generates different feelings, different actions, and different results and outcomes. Now, we don't know exactly what the future will unfold for us, but one narrative creates momentum while the other narrative creates paralysis. And so I want to pause again here and invite you into a sense of reflection, not judgment, but reflection. I want you to ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about AI? How does this story make me feel? Is this narrative serving me or is it limiting me? Is there another way to interpret this circumstance that might feel more empowering instead of powerless? What interpretation aligns with the future that I want to create, my purpose, my impact, my legacy? What interpretation might be better to align with the future that I want to create? Now, again, what I want to reinforce, this isn't about ignoring risk. It's about learning how to engage risk with a creativity mindset instead of fear. And in future episodes, we're going to go a lot deeper into this on how to recognize when judgments are at play and might be blocking your creativity, how to ask better questions in uncertain environments, how to lead and how to live from clarity instead of reactivity. But for now, this episode is really just focused on the foundation. And the foundation that we're introducing you today is that circumstances are neutral. We are meaning making machines. Circumstances do not become good or bad until meaning is applied to a circumstance. And it's that meaning that you choose that shapes the life that you build. This is the awareness that can change everything for you. Think about a moment that probably shows up in your life often, more often than you realize and more often than you would like. Think of a client prospect that doesn't show up to a call, or your direct report is late for a one on one, or maybe your partner takes hours to respond to a text message. In those moments, something internally usually happens very quickly. You may notice the feeling first. You may notice you're feeling annoyed, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling defeated, maybe you feel disrespected. These are not dramatic emotions. They're very familiar emotions that you might have. And if you're honest with yourself, they may show up more often in your day than you would like. And after that feeling starts to surface for you, a story might follow. This always happens to me. They don't respect my time. Did I do something wrong? Again, common, human, and automatic narratives that might show up for you. And when those feelings and those stories go unnoticed, patterns tend to follow. You might react, send a short message, or maybe mark a sharp comment, right? You might avoid, say nothing, but carry it with you. Or maybe you might pull back and mentally disengage or emotionally withdraw. Now, and this could be from your work, and this could be from the partner, this could be from your direct report, this could be from the client. And here's where the shift can happen. The moment you pause and you notice the feeling that you're experiencing and just call it out. I'm feeling annoyed in this moment. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling defeated. Once you just start to acknowledge that there is a feeling at play, you start to create space for yourself. And that space is your opportunity to invite curiosity. And curiosity becomes possible when you pause and notice that feeling. What story am I telling myself right now? Is that story helping me or is this story hijacking me? And in this space, emotion becomes something you can actually regulate, not suppress. Responses become more of a choice, not a reflex. And curiosity starts to replace assumptions we might have. Movement replaces stuckness. So we'll go deeper again in future episodes into how to kind of navigate this curiosity a little better, how to effectively work through discomforting emotions, how to effectively consciously choose what you want to think that aligns with the vision or the life that you're trying to create or build. But for now, the practice I want to leave you with is super simple. I'm going to give you actually a call to action, a tool I want you to practice at least for 1 week. Okay. You've listened to this episode. Don't just read a book and don't just listen to a podcast and not have any action. Information does not drive action. You do. And so you've just come out with some sense of awareness that your circumstances trigger your thoughts trigger your feelings have the ability to drive your action, your inaction, which creates your results. We want to have a key takeaway for you. And your action is I want you to set up a phone reminder or some type of alarm this week for 3 times a day. I want you to be annoyed with yourself 3 times a day. And so maybe it's an hour after you wake up, maybe it's your lunchtime, maybe it's about an hour before you go to bed. And when your alarm goes off, I just want you to check in with yourself and ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Do I feel good? Do I feel bad? Do I feel neutral? If it's just uncomfortable, I don't want you to fix it. There's nothing to fix here. Let's say you don't feel good. What I want you to do is get curious. So, part 2 of this, when your alarm goes off, first thing you're asking yourself, how do I feel right now? Do I feel good? Do I feel bad? Do I feel neutral? Part 2 is then get curious. Can I name precisely what I'm feeling, right? Am I feeling frustrated? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling defeated? Am I feeling overwhelmed? And once you're able to more precisely identify what you're feeling, then gently ask yourself what story might be driving this feeling. And that's it. That's all I want you to do. Your alarm goes off. You ask, do I feel bad, good, or neutral? Can I more precisely identify what I'm feeling? And what is the story that might be driving that feeling? And that's it. No action required yet. No solutions. I don't even want you to solve for this narrative. I just want to increase your awareness. And this is where it begins. Awareness is your first step to mindset. What's going on inside this big old think tank up here? And so, again, in the next episode and quite a few later, we're going to go deeper on how to process emotions instead of reacting, how to work through feelings rather than suppressing, how to emotional intelligence unlocks creativity, leadership, and wiser decision making for you. Because the goal here is not perfection. You are part of the human experience, okay? It's really the goal is awareness. The goal is alignment and really impact that last. And so I'm going to leave you with one question. What story are you telling about your current circumstances? How is that story shaping how you think, how you feel, how you show up? And as you move through your week, I want you to notice when an emotion shows up, when a story follows, and what happens when you simply become aware. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you. My name is Amanda Escobedo, and you've been listening to Game Changer. If today sparked insights, ahas, or new perspectives, I'd be oh so grateful if you subscribed, left a comment, left a review, and shared this episode with 3 people in your network who are ready to master the inner game, their mental model, and they are ready to unlock their inner potential. Your support helps others discover this resource and invites them to be the next game changer. Join me next time for another conversation of leadership, culture, and creating impact that lasts. Thanks for listening.